So today we have Blake Reed Evans with us, and Blake is a stylist. He's a color specialist, a social media expert. He is a salon owner at Shear Art Salon, and of course, he is a Sam ambassador. He has a very passionate and creative, meets precision kind of style to him in the hair that he does and the way that he teaches. So please, in the comments, let's welcome Blake Reed Evans.
What's up, Andrew? Hey, everyone. I'm so
So
stoked to be
happy to
here.
have you here, my friend. We're excited to see some Bob action.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. So, how many of you have ever had a guest? They bring in a picture of a bob, and they're like, "I kind of want this, but do whatever you want. Like, give us some hearts into the chat if you've ever been there, or throw some heart emojis that way, because I know I've been there too, where it's just like they're like, you kind of have free reign. Like, I kind of want it here, but have some fun with it. So what you and I are going to do is we're going to have a super interactive class. So I don't know about you, but I grew up reading these choose your own adventure books. I love them, like the Hardy Boys version, Goosebump books, and things like that. And these books, you would, get to page 13, and then they would say, turn right around the corner and turn to page 86. Or if you want to turn left, then you're going to turn to page 72, and that would craft your story. That's exactly what we are going to be doing today, is choosing our own adventure. So while we continue talking to each other, we need to have our first decision. We're cutting a bob, so I need to know from you, are we going to be cutting our bob to the shoulders, or would we like it just beneath the chin? So let me know in the chat below, shoulders or chin? Shoulders or chin? Go ahead and drop that into the chat to let us know where we're going to be cutting this, because you're going to choose the adventure of where we're going. So what we've done now is gotten this mannequin prepped, and it is like 90% of the way dry. Most of it's done with air drying, but one of my favorite things to do in dry cutting really is to see the hair in its somewhat natural texture with a little bit of root control, depending on how the guest wears it. We got the mannequin prepped with Redken's acidic bonding concentrate leave-in, and then also the quick blow dry. If you've never used this before, it speeds up your blow dry and it smells amazing. So that's what the mannequin is prepped with, and it's really important to make sure that you prep your product, or your hair and your canvas, with product, so that the hair does the things that you need it to do, in addition to the shears. So let's see where we're going to take it. It looks like we are going to be taking it to the chin. So that's what we're going to first determine, is the length of where we're going to cut this. So what we're going to do first is we're going to isolate the fringe area so that we can decide what to do with that later. So I want you all to start thinking about, what are we going to do to the fringe a little bit later? So we're going to get that section out and isolating the fringe. And the reason why we're isolating the fringe is because we are deciding a little bit later what that's going to look like, and I don't want it to get in the way of what we're cutting. So we're going to come in, put a clip up so it's out of her way, and then now we're going to take it to the chin. Now, what I'm realizing here is that this is a lot of hair to cut, so I'm going to need a big shear to do it, but we're still going to break this down into sections so that we can make sure that we get a nice, precise result. So we're taking it to the chin, so we're definitely going to get that length going. While we're getting that going, I need to know from you, do you want the perimeter or the edges of the haircut to be blunt or softly textured? So write that into the chat, blunt or softly textured, because we're definitely taking this to the chin. So that means that the length is going to come here. Do you want it blunt or softly textured? While that's getting ready to come on, we're going to be using our Sam Villa 7-inch dry cutting shears. And my personal favorite is having a swivel. I'm obsessed with these shears. It has a offset thumb, so it's just really comfortable for your use. And then as you move and groove through the hair, you can see that the swivel is moving with your hand. So it's all about making sure that we are preserving our wrist. Andrew and I were talking earlier about, have you ever used a forward set thumb? And at this point in my career, it's been I think 9 years, 10 years of using Samvia shears. And every time I use a shear that's not offset, like my wrist hurts immediately, which I know it's good for some people, but my wrists love a offset thumb and then definitely a swivel as well. So it looks like we have blonde, softly textured. Oh, it is actually, okay, so thanks, Brittany, for that. You just helped be the tiebreaker. We're going to do some soft texture. So what we're going to do first is we're going to help create some texture within the interior of the shape. So we're going to come in and we are going to make sure that we get a little bit more texture. So we're going to use the wide side of the comb, and we're going to elevate this section up horizontally. And what we're going to come through and do is we're going to take our shear and we're going to cut at a 45-degree angle to help create texture. But to make sure that we maintain tension, we're only cutting between here. So now we're going to come in with our wide side tooth. The reason why we're using a wide side tooth is that it actually helps promote more texture because it's not perfectly gathering all the hair together in the way that a fine side of the comb would do. Now we're going to go ahead and take that and drop it down. Don't worry, we're going to go ahead and take some length off in a second. But the reason why we're going through and doing layering first is because how many of you have ever cut the perimeter first, then layered it, and then had to recut the perimeter before? Give us some hearts if you've been there before, because I've totally been there too. So the reason why we're doing that is layers first, then perimeter, is just so that you only have to cut the perimeter once. So we're going to come in, wide side of the comb. Now, because of where we are in the head form, we're going to come in and we are going to swing out ever so slightly. What that's going to do is going to help preserve weight and length in the corners there so that we're not cutting the corners off of our bob. So we're coming in horizontally, elevating everything, and knocking some length off. Now, what's cool is that there's a lot of hair flying right now, but look how much length is still preserved on where we are. So although we're taking a lot of length off, there's still some layers left behind. So now we're going to go ahead and cut this next corner. We are going to come in with the wide side of the tooth to help create more texture so it's not so perfect. We are going to swing out ever so slightly. And then we are going to cut in at a 45-degree angle and doing some notching so that there is a lot of texture being cut. So you can see this is the hair in its natural fashion. You can see the beautiful texture that's already happening. But now we need to go in and cut the length. So we're going to go ahead and ask our guests to lean their head forward. This helps make sure that the hair, whenever you lift back up, doesn't come poking out. So now we're going to come in. Actually, we're going to take the fine side of the comb just to really help gather the hair. And then we're going to come in and notch underneath. So this is with 0 elevation. Now we're dealing with dry hair here. So you may need to go in and fix some imperfections, and that's totally okay. I'm a huge fan of dry cutting. Give us some hearts if you love dry cutting. And with that comes the necessary task of triple checking your work. And notice I said triple checking, not double checking. And the big thing to realize with that is because when the hair is dry, it is less precise. So it's okay. And what we're doing is we're just knocking off some length, making sure that the texture is still preserved in the perimeter. I am a huge fan of dry cutting. So now you'll be able to see it in this direction. We're going to come in, and then all we're doing is with a fine side tooth of the comb, then we're going to take our shear and press it against the hair or neck. And what that's doing is it's pushing it into 0 elevation. Now, there's a little argument that can be made that because the hair is expanding, it's not true 0 elevation, and that's totally okay because you're right. There might be a little bit of graduation or layers that might happen. And we're going to come through, point cut, and then double check for precision. Although this is supposed to be a natural looking textured haircut, we still want to make sure that it's good to go. Now, because of where we are in the hair, perfect. Carrie, people look at me the same way whenever I say dry cutting is my favorite. I'm a huge fan of making sure that the haircut fits the lifestyle of the guest. And if their hair is being cut dry. You kind of see their natural texture and the way that the hair moves. My favorite way, and this is a big hot tip, is to request your guests to come in with their hair styled the way they do majority of the time. Notice how I said majority of the time. And the big reason is because, your guests are like, well, I straighten my hair, twice a month for a date night. And it's like, okay, cool. But if you're wearing your hair like wavy curly the rest of the time, that's how I want to see your hair. Like, I'll make sure it looks good whenever you straighten your hair, but I also really want to make sure that it fits your day-to-day lifestyle. So that's why I'm a huge fan of dry cutting personally. And then now I'm just going through with my Sanvia Sleeker iron just to help make sure that we can see it when it is straight. Is there any little imperfections that we need to clean up? And the answer is yes, which is totally fine. I had a really great class the other day with Sarah Bramham, an amazing Redken artist. And she says, we're so scared of being imperfect in front of our guests that we don't fix the mistakes that we make whenever we're working on them. And that's the big thing, is don't be afraid to fix the mistakes, because I think it's more important for us to fix them while they're here versus waiting for them to find out or praying that they won't find out or find them. So now that we've done that in the nape area, totally, most of my guests are ponytails. Stacey, I feel that too. I'm always like, are you wearing your ponytail every day, or are you doing it like when you go to, Pilates 3 times a week? Because that's what I really need to know. So now what if you're noticing is that we're cutting dry, but the hair still has a little bit of dampness to it. And it's just to make sure that the texture stays there. I didn't do a perfect blow dry, but the clips that I'm using is the Samvia sectioning clips, and they have this little rubber part to it so that they don't leave a dent in the hair. So when you're cutting dry hair, you can see that there's really not a dent there at all. And that's because of that clip. So that's the reason. I mean, I go through these clips like crazy. They're my favorite clips I've ever used. So you'll see me using these most of the time. So now what we're doing is just combing the hair back into natural fall. So here's another tip for you. When you're trying to get the hair into natural fall to where it truly, truly lives, is I want you to take the wide side of your comb and you're going to comb in one direction. You're going to comb in the other direction, and then you're going to comb down. And what that does is it helps get any of those tangles out and anything that might be catching the hair. So it's one of the big important things to do. Now we're going to come through and we are going to take a section in the back of the head, and it's going to be a horizontal section that goes from top of ear to top of ear. And this is beneficial for us to work in sections just so that we have some precision to what we are doing. Now, I want to know from you, do you want a solid straight bob or do you want a soft angle? So type into the chat, soft angle or straight across bob. Because right now we definitely decided about chin length. We decided some texture, and perfect. So we're going to go through and we are doing some soft texture already. But now I want to know from you, what are we going to be doing here? Perfect. Solid, straight across. Nice. I like your style, everybody. So we're going to have a nice straight across chin length bob that has some soft texture in the bottom. So what we're going to be doing here now is a technique that is considered a soft undercut. Is considered a soft undercut. So we may need to go back in and take a little bit more length off, but that's okay. And in the soft undercut, what we are going to do is see where our base, the underneath section is and where the length is. That's going to be our guide. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to slide a 1/4 inch past where that guide is. So I'm going to show it to you from that direction first, side profile, and then now you can see it from the back. Let's go ahead and come just a little bit closer so that you can see. And I'm using the wide side of the comb, and I'm not pushing it against the head because it's going to help create graduation or more texture within the shape. So we're going to come in here, and now I want to make sure that we preserve just a little bit of length in the front. So I'm going to actually take my wide side of the comb. I'm going to take tension with my fingers for the first time. But what I'm going to do, and I want you all to pay attention to this part of it, is, did you notice that? And what that's doing is loosening up the tension that I have on the hair so that this still stays like natural and very loose, so that we have a texture to the bottom, even though we're going straight across. So this is considered a soft undercut. The reason why it's considered a soft undercut is, if you notice, you have your length underneath, and then the hair is going to fall just ever so slightly longer than the section underneath. What is happening here is you have texture underneath, or you have a length underneath, more length on top. And what ends up happening is that this hair will be able to tuck under this hair, so that you'll have a really nice bevel whenever you style the hair with a round brush or a flat iron. And when it's straight, you get more movement and texture. This is a technique that is amazing for super thick hair. Perfect. Rhonda says that her heart is beating, that she feels like that you'll pass out trying this on a mannequin. It's all good. That's what mannequins are for. She's not going to leave a bad Yelp review. If she hates it, it's fine. If she does leave a bad Yelp review, I'm going to have to call my therapist, because I'm going to have some challenges. But what we're going to do here is the same on the opposite side. Wide side of the tooth of the comb, and then we're going to come through and we're going to loosen up a little bit, and then now we're just going to cut our length. And the reason why we're doing slight over direction in this section that we are just doing is so that we preserve weight and length in the corners, so that when they come up, it visually looks like one length, but technically it's a little bit longer on the sides. But everyone type that's okay, because it is all about visual balance, not technical balance. And this is something that took me forever to wrap my head around, is visually it looks one length, which is all that matters. But technically it's a little bit longer on the sides. The reason why is because the hair grows so much further back here in the back of the head than it does up front, because the hairline goes so much further down. Up here, the hairline goes so far up, so it's really easy to make the hair look shorter because there's just not as much density there. So if we can go through and eliminate a little bit of density in the back, so visually it looks a little bit lighter, you'll be good to go. So now we've established that. Now let's double check for precision. And we're going to come through with our iron, and we are going to flat iron this in place. Now, if you've never used this iron, it's my favorite iron to create bevels and waves and things like that in the hair. So you can see that it's curved on the edges, and that means that when you go into flat iron the hair, it's not going to leave any like dents or bumps or anything like that. Like I said, it's great for leaving waves into the hair too. So we're going to come in, go through. Now we're just doing this to really double check for precision, to make sure that it looks good when it's straight too, because even though this person may wear a wavy or air dry it or things like that, we want to double check for that. Now, what I want you to see though is that yes, it is straight across, but there is some soft texture that is happening when the hair elevates. And that's the benefit of us doing some low elevation whenever we're doing this, is now we're getting expansion outward. The other reason why this is getting so much expansion is because of the horizontal sections that we are taking.
How much longer are you leaving that section? Do you have kind of a guide of how much?
Absolutely. So I traditionally, in most cases, thank you, Andrew, for that question. It's a great question. A quarter of an inch is typically about how long I'll leave it. And that's because so the guest doesn't freak out about it being shorter underneath. But don't get me wrong, there are totally people where we can leave it even more dramatic. And that's the denser the hair, the more dramatic you can leave it. That's a great question. So now we're going through and we're finishing up the back of the head. We're gonna have our guest lean forward one more time. And we're gonna take the wide side tooth of the comb, and we are going to double check our section. And we're gonna drop that again, about a quarter inch down, and cut. So I want you all to take a deep breath. It's gonna be good. And visually, how much longer are we taking about in between? I love that. That is a great question. And the other thing too is visual, when you're trying to create visual balance, the other thing that you can do too is just sometimes you have to cut it twice. Like I am always team cut it twice so it's perfect versus cutting it too short and being like, oh, it'll grow out, you know. So what we're doing in the corners here is, if this is what you're referring to, is when you take your comb and you're working within this corner area, you can take your comb and then you're going to swing it out ever so slightly. What that does is it just creates a little bit more length on that opposite side. And we're going through and taking length off, not cutting past that second knuckle as much as possible so that we don't cut ourselves. But you can see that you're getting just a little bit more length in that opposite direction. And we're going to repeat this on the opposite side. Now, I don't know about you, but we need to go through and create texture on the back of this haircut because the hair is just so dense. So what I want to know from all of you is, do you want to go through and do texturizing with a traditional shear, or do you want to see the point cutting shear from Samvia? So let us know in the chat. Do you want us to do it with a traditional shear, or do you want us to do it with a point cutting shear from Samvia? We can do one or the other. Go ahead and let us know into the chat while we go through and just bevel this hair out to make sure that we're checking for accuracy within the haircut. Perfect. Hi, Bangladesh. I'm glad that you're here. Perfect. See the new shear, point cutting shear. Yes. Okay. You are people after my own heart. That is my new favorite addition to my shear collection, is the 14 teeth point cutting shear. And I'm so excited for you all to see this once we get this beveled out so that we can continue working. We're going to come in, get this beveled out, because you said that you wanted some texture. Oh, and I see a hair that needs to be fixed. That's the thing. Oh, you can see it right there, and it's okay. We're going to come in, bye hair. There you go. So the benefits of doing a soft undercut, you can already see it, is that it's short underneath, longer on top, but it's not like dramatic because we only dropped a 1/4 of an inch between each of the sections. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this collapses inward just a little bit more. So we're going to take another section. Perfect. Rhonda says, I'm going down.
Could you bring her back into center of the screen just a little bit, Blake?
Absolutely. Perfect. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Now what we're going to do is come in with our point cutting shear, and then we are going to help create even more texture within the section. So we're going to take a horizontal section. It's about an inch thick. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we are going to notch at a diagonal, and we're going to extract weight. So what I love about these shears is it doesn't really snag on the hair at all, because of the way that it's cutting the hair, and it's cutting on the inside of the circles here. And then we're going to cut that down. So what that does is it helps give us some more texture and movement within the haircut. And we're going to come in, again, wide side of the comb. I'm going to show you now from an angle that you would be cutting it at. We're going to come in, cut at an angle, and we're just going to extract weight. This is also the importance of making sure that we are prepping the mannequin, or not the mannequin, the client, really, the client, with the right products so that when we cut in or cutting the hair dry, that our shears glide through. We don't dull our shears out too much. And that's all in the prep of the haircut. So we're coming through and doing some weight extraction to make sure that we get a little bit of texture happening through there. These shears are like my go-to. Like I've used them more than anything, is these point cutting shears and then the 7-inch swivel dry cutting shears. What's really cool right now is, I wish I got this deal, is when you buy a shear that's not an Essential Series shear, so anything else, you'll get this shear, you'll get a texture shear for free. Is that right, Andrew?
That's right.
Okay, perfect.
Huge. Hey, Missy's asking, can we see what it would look like with a
Oh,
traditional point cut?
absolutely.
Also, and I'm just going to give you a couple questions here that you can probably address all together. But she wants to see what it looks like with a traditional shear. Rhonda is asking, when you were cutting into it, was that not too far into the hair shaft? So, kind of talk
Mm.
about the distance that you're cutting.
Yeah, that's great. Great questions, everybody. So, when we're cutting the hair, there's three zones that you want to be cutting in. If you cut towards the scalp, Rhonda, you're totally right. That's considered like a no-no zone in terms of cutting, unless you want expansion or for the hair to really like float off of the head at all times, because there's going to be short little hairs in there. For most guests, we avoid that area unless they're looking for like a really mullety shag, or I guess that might want a lot more volume in the crown. But where I traditionally cut is from the mids to the ends of the hair. And what that does is that's where we get a lot of mobility within the hair. And that's also where we get a lot of texture within the hair. So if you keep it from the mids or the ends, you'll be good to go. The no-no zone is like in that first third of the hair, to go for it. Now, for friends that wanted to see the traditional shear, what you can do is come in and take your shear. Let's go this way. And you're going to cut in, but when you cut in, you're going to cut on your way out so that you don't cut yourself. Do not cut yourself. So you're going to come in and you're going to just slightly remove weight. That's option one. Option two is when you come in, you're going to come in and you're going to slightly close the shear as you're working. And that is also your other option. So you're going to come in and you can just lightly remove weight through the hair. So that those are your options. So now we're going to come in, drop down this final section, and then we're going to see a little bit more weight that needs to be removed. So let's go ahead and do it with the shear because it's already in my hand. So what I'm checking for is, okay, that looks good in the mirror. And then now I'm going to come in and I'm going to just remove a little bit of weight through the tips of the hair. And that's just going to help make sure that it lays a little bit flatter. When you're taking a lot of length off, this is another tip for you. I want you to write this down if you're taking notes. Whenever you're cutting a lot of hair off, because right now there is a lot of hair that we've cut off, you need to cut the hair to look like it's always been that length. You need to cut the hair like it's always been that length. So that means that naturally hair gets a little bit thinner towards the end. Sometimes you have to build that in unless someone's looking for a super structured, strong shape. So you're going to go in and you're going to remove a little bit of weight, at least towards the tips of the hair, so that it looks like it's always been that length and it looks natural and lived in. Now, this isn't a always situation, but if you have guests that are like, the haircut just looks too intense, this is a really quick and easy fix. Hi, Twyla. I'm so excited that you're here. So now that we've done the back, now we need to be able to move to the sides. Now, you've all voted on, we are doing around chin length. We are doing some soft texture towards the ends. We just did some texturizing. Actually, both you chose both. So we did it with regular shear and the 14 teeth point cutting shear. So now we're moving into the side. So what we're going to do now is play connect the dots. We're going to take our section here and we're going to clean it up ever so slightly, moving into the side of the head, making sure that their head is perfectly straight. Your guests that are wobbly, you can say, listen, if you want to be wobbly, you're going to run the risk of your haircut being uneven. Usually they sit right up. So you'll be good to go. Now, when we're deciding the length here, we're just going to match to that second layer that we had underneath. So not the bottom layer, but the second layer. And it's just because of the area that we're on the head. So now we're going through and doing point cutting. I'm still using the wide side of the comb so that it's not super tight tension. But now that we're moving towards around the face, we're going to create a little bit of over direction. So what I want you to pay attention to is how the hair on the hairline is moving just to the ear area. So what this is totally going to do is going to create a little bit of angle to the haircut. But what that's going to do is going to leave the weight that's necessary to make sure that visually it looks balanced. So make sure that you write that into the chat. Visually balanced, visually balanced. Visual balance is different than technical balance. And the reason why you want to do this is so that when you have the hair on the sides, because remember, there's less hair here, there's not as much density. There's a lot more density here. So this is why a lot of the times in the back of a haircut, it can look longer than it does in the front. And that really has to do with the density of the hair that you are working with. So we're going to come in and flat iron just to check for balance, although we want this to be textured and everything like that. We just want to make sure that visually it looks like it's one length, but technically it's a little bit longer in the front, but it's okay because it's all about visual balance. So I love that you're all typing that in there. Now we're going to come in and we're going to use our 14 teeth point cutting shear, and we're just going to remove a little bit of weight just to make sure that there's just a little bit of texture happening towards the end so that it can match what you all decided on what we're doing with the bob. Now, same thing for over here. We're going to come in and we're going to over direct the hair a little bit. And we're going to remove the weight. So I'm going to bring this a little bit closer so you all can see really the beautiful texture that it does there. Now, I live in Florida where hair gets frizzy really easily. So texture shears are not typically something that we like to use down here because the shorter hair will shrink up and make the hair frizzy. What I found is with these shears, that's not a problem because it cuts on the inside of each of the circles so that it leaves softer cuts so that the hair doesn't get quite as frizzy. It's a game changer in terms of what we are doing. Perfect. And let's double check through there. I think that looks good. I think we can clean that up. Visual balance. Absolutely. So we're going to come in and cut to make sure that we are good to go. Yeah, visual balance. So we're going to double check this. And you can see here, it has this lovely shape to it, but it's just slightly longer in the front, and that's okay because we want to make sure that it's visually balanced. We're going to come in, drop that down so that we can cut the perimeter. So we're going to cut this down one more time and cut across to give a soft blunt line. And just remember, over direct ever so slightly around the front to make sure that it stays visually balanced. Now, what we're going through and doing is switching between shears. We're totally styling the hair as we're cutting it. And that is just to help save time, my friends, because haircuts totally take time, particularly when you're cutting as much length off as we are. So think about ways that you can style the hair while you're cutting it at the same time to help save time so that you don't have to go through and cut it once, then style it, and then go back through and cut it a second time. You can do everything in one harmonious movement by styling and cutting at the same time so that you will be able to save your guest time, but also save yourself time while you are working. And we're just coming through, just beveling the ends under a little bit, and we're just checking for precision. You know, it's not supposed to be perfect because if it's supposed to be perfect, that would be like a precision haircut that we would be doing. And in this situation, we're not necessarily doing a precision haircut. We want it to be somewhat natural and have some texture and movement to it. But visually, we want it to be balanced at the same time. So we're going to come through and check. We've got our guests here. But do you all see here how now it looks like a one length bob, but when you hold down your sections, this is going to be a little bit longer towards the front so that visually it's balanced, but visually it looks one length, but technically, if you really get down to it, it's a little bit longer in the front. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to switch to the other side. What I want you all to start thinking about is what we want to do with the fringe. Do we want a straight across fringe? Do we want no fringe? Or do we want a curtain fringe? So start thinking about it. Now, Barb has a really great question. Oh, I love Andrew whenever you pop up. Is it bad that I like the 5.5-inch scissors? I have small hands and cut myself if I use a 6-inch or larger shear. Barb, use what you love. You know, I just love that you are putting thought into the shear that you are using and that you've tried other shears. So everyone give Barb some hearts, because I think so many of us as stylists, we get so wrapped up in like, this is the shear that I use and I use this shear all the time. And this is the only shear that I'm going to use. But I love, Barb, that you said, you know what? I know that there are other shears out there. Let me try. But I tend to cut myself a little bit because of my small hands. It's all good, Barb. Like, use the shears that work for you. I have an array of shears. I personally love the 7-inch dry cutting shears, but I also have shorter shears. So you can see I have all the way down to this length, and I love it for precision. And it's all good. I love that you have that. Perfect. So now what we're going to go through and do is come in, and we're going to over direct ever so slightly. And we're going to create a little bit more length in the front so that it's visually balanced, even though technically it's not, and it's okay. And we're point cutting there. And then we're going to flat iron to get into it. So I see it looks like we are definitely going to be doing a curtain fringe when we get to the front. Give yourself some hearts while we're getting this straightened out. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm not going to do any texturizing on this side, so you can see the difference in how the hair lays without any texturizing. So we're going to come in and drop the length down. And now we're getting into salon speed while we're cutting so that we can get to the fringe area, because, you know, that's like the best. It's like dessert in a haircut. It's like saving the best for last. So we're going to come in and make sure that we're taking our length off and that it matches up to that back layer. We're going to come in, drop in, and we're going to cut. Biggest thing is to make sure that when you're cutting, you cut from between here and here. Don't cut past that second knuckle, because that's when you cut yourself. So we really want to make sure that you avoid it. And coming in through this final section here, and we're going to cut it. So now we're going to double check to make sure that we are beveled underneath so that we can finally get to the best part, which is the fringe. Using my Sanvia Sleeker, and I love it because it just helps bevel the hair under so lovely. And we're going to come in and bevel the hair. And now this is the part that we just need to double check. And I can see that there might be something that needs to be fixed. So what I see through the front here is that it does get visually longer too. So that means that I over directed just a little too much. So all I need to do is soften my over direction and take that corner off so that it stays more visually balanced instead of visually longer in the front. We're going to come in and cut. And listen, there's nothing wrong with like making adjustments to haircuts as you're doing it, because it's better for us to be able to do that while we are working. Now, what I can see here is that it's totally longer. So I'm going to go in and cut it. And sometimes that's the issue whenever we are cutting, and that's okay. The reason why it ends up longer on one side is traditionally either body position or finger angle. So it looks like my finger angle is just a little much on that side. So we're just going to take a little bit more length off, and it's totally okay. We're going to take just a little bit more length off in the corner. And all of you decided that we were going to do a curtain fringe, which I think is going to look so cool on this type of bob. I'm going to cut just a little bit more length off. And again, we're just going with the over direction just right above the ear. And that's my favorite sound, is the sounds of shears cutting, and double checking that. Then we're going to bevel this down to make sure that it looks beautiful. So now we're going to move into the fringe area, which we already have sectioned out. That is a section from the corner of the eye to the top of the head, and the other corner of the eye to the top of the head. So now what we can do is comb this hair down to see what we are working with. And now we need to determine the length of where we're going to go. So do we want to go to the bridge of the nose or the tip of the nose? So decide bridge of the nose, so you can type bridge, or tip of the nose for tip. So bridge of the nose or tip of the nose. Perfect. And we'll go with the majority in this section. So when you're finding your fringe, all you need to do is corner the eye, rock that comb back so that you can find the section of where you're going. Then you can take your comb in the center to see where it lifts off the head. That's going to be considered your fringe area. So we're going to get that hair out of the way. That is not part of the fringe area, so that we can cut a beautiful fringe. Perfect. So it looks like we're going to go to the tip of the nose. I like that. That's what I was secretly hoping you would all choose, but it's totally up to you. So what I want you to do here is just decide where you want the length to be for your shortest piece. So we're going to come in to the tip of the nose. And the big thing is, if you notice, is we're working towards the tip of the nose. We're using the wide side of the comb. And then with our fingers, even though we need the tension from our fingers, we're going to come in and pop that so that we do not cut it too short. Another thing that you can do too is, actually we can make this a little shorter, is when we cut it, you can just cut it with no tension at all. So that's exactly a great way to make sure that there's no tension so it doesn't get too short. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a vertical section within the area that we are working. And we are going to lift off the section. Now I'm going to take the fine side of the comb and I'm going to lift off. And then I'm going to cut to wherever that shortest piece is. So right now I can see that shortest piece is starting to pop through. And I'm going to come in and Rhonda, hold your breath. I'm going to cut it. And perfect. So we're going to come in and we are going to come in and create an angle. Now what I want you to pay attention to is the angle that we have going on. And we're going to take another vertical section, borrow from the center, and we're going to over direct. So for you to see it from a front angle, you're going to come and you're going to over direct. But now there's going to be an angle to how we're doing this. So we're going to come in more to the side. And we are going to come, oh, I created some tangles in the hair. Perfect. So again, coming through. And what we're doing is the weight is going to be on top. So that's going to help these tuck under ever so slightly. Rhonda, hold your breath. It's okay. It's a mannequin. She's not going to leave a bad Yelp review. But what it's doing is it's creating weight and length in the opposite direction so that you get the curtain vibe to a curtain bang. Come in one more time. Comb. And now you're sitting here thinking like, Blake, you better be adding some texture to this. You totally can. I just wanted to do that because I knew that Rhonda would like feel like she's going to pass out from watching a haircut. It's all good. So what you can do now is take your point cutting shear and you're going to alleviate weight in the center of this shape. So you're going to come in and just towards the tips of the hair, you're going to alleviate some weight, but leaving the top layer alone. So that's the most important thing, is to make sure that you're going to leave the top alone. The reason why you want to do that, this is the weight that's going to make the curtain bangs tuck under. So you don't want to mess with that. But the interior, the hair underneath, totally fair game for us to go through and make that tuck under. And we're going to come through. And again, leaving that top section out. I'm going to get a little bit closer so you can see that top section we don't want to cut, but the underneath, fair game. We're going to go through and remove some weight to make sure that it has more free-flowing movement to it. And we're going to repeat on the other side. So in conclusion, with everything that we've done in terms of cutting, is that we've gone in and you all decided either shoulder length or chin length. You went for just below chin length. Then you decided, do you want it to be blunt or do you want to have some soft texture? You chose soft texture. Then you chose, and we're going to texturize with shears, or we're going to texturize with blending shears, and you chose both. So we did both. And then you decided that it was going to be a more blunt cut versus, or more straight across bob than a bob that is angled. But the tip there was still to make sure that there was some visual angling happening. So you can see the angle that we're doing here with the curtain fringe. And then now we're coming in and we're beveling so that this tucks under a little bit more. We're going to drop our length down. And then now you can even see the difference in this side has texturizing to it. So it has just a little bit more expansion to it. This side doesn't have any texturizing done to it. So it's laying a little bit more flat to the head. Even if I push the hair up, it still stays a little bit flatter. And this is the bob that we are going to be working with. I'm going to go in and add a little bit of texture spray just so it looks a little bit more natural and lived in. I'm using the triple dry from Redken. But what I want you to do is, if you're like, wow, I really like working with multiple shears, I need to make an investment, like now's the time. You can head over to sanvia.com and we have our promo going on right now where you can get a shear, buy a shear, and then you get a texture shear for free. You can use any shear length that you want to get, but this is what we're working with. And then we're just going to add a little bit of texture to the shape by just adding some waves to it to give it a nice like Instagrammable or TikTok finish. Perfect. So what we're going to go through and do is create some angles with waves. This is like lived in waves. So we're just coming in and taking our iron and we're doing 3/4 of a rotation to one side and then 3/4 of a rotation to the other side. And this is what's considered like lazy waves. And it's just so that it has like a really nice finish. Now, if we've never connected before on social media, go ahead and give me a follow. It's at Blake Reed Evans on TikTok and also on Instagram. And also make sure that if you're not following Sanvia on Instagram or TikTok, because obviously you're following us on Facebook or YouTube or on our email list, make sure you give us a follow there too. So we're just going through and just creating a little bit of styling texture using the sleeker and helping break that up so that you get a really nice bob finish. Perfect. So, and I love that. Ron, I'm sitting here like bringing the hair down and right in front of my hand, half turned, coming with my left hand and turned away. I love that. I love that so much. Yeah, I love that you're playing along with it. Thank you all so much for tuning in with everything that we're doing. If you want to see some final images of this haircut, make sure that you head over to Instagram and see the story there. And thanks so much for having me. And it's just really, it was really awesome to be able to hang out with all of you and create a bob together. It's the first time I've ever done an interactive cutting class like this before. And it's really cool, the results that we're getting.
I remember those choose your own adventure books, and I always loved those. We would have those bookstore days in elementary school where they'd set up the bookstore out in the lobby, and I'd always do the choose your own adventure. So I was really excited when you brought that up.
Yeah, I'm like, I just, as an educator, you're always like thinking about it. And like, I don't know, I had like this daydream one time of like, wow, choose your own adventure. How can I incorporate that into education? Because I'm so nerdy when it comes to stuff like that. And I was like, we can do that on the live because that's the best place to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, great education today. Lots of great tips and tricks. And I love how you kind of did two different sides for us to give us different examples of how you could approach this particular haircut. Great education as always. And thank you so much for joining us, Blake.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you everyone for tuning in. And you'll see the final results on Instagram stories.
Awesome.